the Nurses Doing GAMSAT podcast, brought to you by Thankflip GAMSAT. We're here to teach you how to smash the GAMSAT, get into medicine, and become a flippin' great doctor.
Welcome back to the Nurses Doing GAMSAT podcast by Thankflip GAMSAT. I'm Dr. Tom, and we're joined by Marie as well. Welcome, Marie. And what we're going to be talking about today is what to do if you've done the GAMSAT before and you need to increase your score. Now, this is a problem for a lot of people because, if you're repeating the GAMSAT, oftentimes people don't know what else they can do. They feel like they've done everything. What's left? What's going to work? Other than doing practice questions, which you figured out don't help, and memorizing science topics, which you figured out doesn't help, what else is left? What can you do? While others worry, is it actually possible to increase their score? Because they're feeling all this self-doubt. Is this a sign? Can I actually do this? All this stuff comes up. So we're going to address all of that and more today. But before we jump into that, just a quick reminder to subscribe to this podcast so that you're, however you're listening to it, subscribe so that you're getting the new episodes when they go live, and go to the show notes to get all the goodies we're going to be giving away, a couple of things. So to get to the show notes, just go to thankflipgamsat.com/podcast and then find this one. But Marie, how are you going?
I feel like today you should be asking the third host of this podcast for their opinions, because there is someone else that you have not introduced here now.
Yeah, I've been very rude and I have not introduced the third participant here, and it is Gracie, the Queen. And the Queen as in a cat, a female cat. Their official name is a Queen, and she's lying right here on my table, asleep, purring her little head off.
I would like to go on record saying it's my cat. I petitioned for 10 years to get a cat, and Tom, is neither here or there for the cat. You're like, well, the cat's around, if Marie's not around, I'll feed her and I'll give her pats here and there. I love the cat with all my heart, and she spends all day, every day in Tom's office. She just can't get enough of Tom. She's just
as soon as I get in here, she's scratching at the door trying to get in.
Favorite human energy. She's just like, let me in. Also, Gracie is a super cat. She fell off the balcony and fell 5 stories. Yeah. No one even believes me when I say this. She lived to tell the tale. No injuries, basically no injuries. The injuries that she sustained were by the misdiagnosis of the vet when we took her there after the fall.
Yeah.
The vet was like, oh, there's all these things going wrong. So, pumped her full of fluid, and then that's what nearly killed her, the fluid.
Yeah.
But, she's a wonder cat, this one, and she's particularly cute, let's face it.
She is. I'd pick her up, but she's just going between sleeping and purring here, so I don't want to disturb her. But I'm sure in another episode I can pick her up and show you for those who are watching the video.
Oh, no, she's just with her favourite human. Of course, I am not her favourite human, even though I love her so much. With her cuddles and snuggles.
I grew up with a cat. And the cat we had as a kid, she was, rough. She was rough as guts. We found her. She was a kitten behind a bin in a commission building. And so, yeah, I had to learn very quickly how not to get scratched by a cat. But this one, Gracie, she is just such a softie. She just doesn't scratch. She's just purrs at every really easily and just really pleasant.
She's beautiful and she's loving, but not much in the coconut with her. She's
No, she jumped off the balcony. Where are you going, cat? There's nothing down there. Can't you see? It's 5 stories down. Where are you going?
She jumped. I think she fell. No one saw.
No, I reckon she jumped. I reckon she's like, I'm just going to head down there and see what's down there. Well, luckily she's about 2.5 kilograms. She's tiny, so the wind probably just gusted. The gusts of wind that she felt like a little parachute. And,
anyway, I wonder if Gracie will be able to help people today when we're talking about kind of how to bounce back after you've sat the GAMS and maybe it hasn't gone your way. So I think there'll be a lot of people here listening straight after the GAMS. There'll be a lot of people listening after you've done the GAMS, had a little break, and then gotten the results. But I think the first thing to really focus on is you gotta pick yourself up. You gotta look at this from a different point of view, because look, firstly, it's normal to feel like, disappointed or frustrated, or sometimes even like a little bit embarrassed. People are like, oh, damn it. But you got to realize that this is one small moment in your life, and pick yourself up again to reframe this, to create it into positive momentum. Like, if we look at the evidence that's out there, there are many, 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 many med students and doctors that had to sit the GAMSAT more than once.
I'm one of them. Should I tell my story?
Included. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, because the first time I did the GAMS, I studied for it all wrong. I memorized topics from the textbook. I did practice questions to try and improve. And as I did my first GAMS, as I was walking out of that exam hall, I knew I'd have to do it again, and I knew that it was that I'd messed things up. I studied for it for essentially like I studied for the wrong exam. I didn't study in the way that was relevant to this exam, and so then I did it again, and I improved. I increased my score, and I then got an interview for my second attempt with the University of Sydney. And this is kind of not quite related, but it's still related, because I did the interview and I didn't go well, and they declined me, right? And that for me was kind of this moment that people go through with the GAMSAT, where I felt like really crushed by the whole thing, because they met me, they knew me, and they said, no, not you. And so I had to kind of, like Marie's saying, just you got to feel that you're going to be upset, and that's normal. And you're just going to have to go with it for a little bit. But at one point, we've got to start to turn things around. And like Marie's saying, start reframing it into, okay, what did this teach me? What can I learn from this?
I mean, I've got a similar non-GAMSAT example where maybe if you've been listening to this podcast, you know that Tom does a lot of like powerlifting. And I got so inspired last year that I was like, right, I'm going to do the same. I'm going to be powerlifting. And so I started a program at Exercise Physiologist, and I was going, doing everything I needed to do. And then I've snagged a problem with one of my glutes. One of my glutes is not activating the way it should, which is then meaning my hammy's not good, which then eventually led to me not being able to walk for like 2 days properly because my knee hurt so much, but it was all of the muscles. And so I went back to the exercise physiologist and was like, yeah, what do I do? And so she's actually stepped me back, and she's like, you're not allowed to pick up weights for 2 weeks. We need to reactivate this glute. And she said, and this is the important thing that I want to tell you, she said to me, you have a goal. You know where you want to get. By December, I want to be deadlifting 100 kilos. That's my goal, and she's known it the whole time. She was like, it's at this exact point that most people give up, because it feels like you're going backwards. But what we're doing is we're identifying where in your foundations it's not the best that it could be. And if we do not fix this now, there is no way you're going to hit 100 kilos in December. So we need to step back. This is actually a really good thing to get it now, to do it now, and to fix it. And so now for the next 2 weeks, I'm basically like stretching and doing ab work and a little bit of building glutes. Like, I'm not even deadlifting. Like, I feel, you know what? I'm going through all of the stuff that you would be feeling. A little bit disappointed, a little bit angry, a bit embarrassed. Like, what sort of weightlifter doesn't lift weights? Like, oh my God. So, like, but I've got to reframe this into a positive. And this is exactly what you did really well, Tom. You went, okay, and step back and I feel the feelings. The healing's in the feeling. I've said that over and over again. The healing is in the feeling. You got to feel it, and then we're going to go, what now? What now? What's next? And I'll tell you. Sorry, go on, Tom.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say that the other thing that's really important to acknowledge here is that this is not a reflection of your ability to actually succeed in a medical degree. I don't know if we're going to be talking about this later, Marie, but It's not, getting a low score on the GAMSAT for whatever reason is not an indication of your intelligence or your potential as a doctor. It's there've been lots of studies done trying to see what's the best indicator of success in a medical degree. Australian studies that have looked at the GAMSAT, they've looked at the interview process, they've looked at your GPA, undergraduate GPA, and consistently what they keep finding is that the best indicator of your ability or potential to succeed in a medical degree is not the GAMSAT. Right. In isolation, it's not the GAMSAT. The number one, the best factor that predicts your success is your undergraduate GPA. Right. So if you have the minimum GPA that the universities require, which is usually a 5 or a 5.5, and if you want to know more about this, we do have an episode called "Is My GPA High Enough?" Can't remember the episode number off the top of my head, but if you go to thankfullygamsat.com/podcast, you can find it there. But we talk about GPAs. But anyway, so if your GPA is high enough, you have what it takes, right? And if you have a health science degree, such as nursing, physio, OT, ambos, chiropractic, whatever kind of health-related clinical kind of a degree, that gives you predicts a better performance in a medical school than people with, for example, a biomedicine or a science or any other kind of degree. So
don't want to discriminate against those either. It doesn't mean you can't succeed with a biomed, but we're just looking at the indicators of what the research has shown us.
Yeah, and even if you are a biomed or a med science student, if you have above the minimum GPA, you have what it takes to succeed in a medical school. They've just put in this exam called the GAMSAT because so many people want to get in, and they've kind of had to differentiate people. So they've come up with this exam, and they're like, it doesn't really it's not really a predictor of success, but we kind of have to do it to screen some people out. So we kind of have to play the GAMSAT game.
This is the way I like to think about it. Say, like, you do get into med, okay, and you're a doctor, and you're in the resus bay at ED, and you're pumping some dude's chest, resuscitating him, and he takes a deep breath, he comes back to life. Is he ever going to turn around and go, "You that saved my life, how many times did you sit the GAMSAT, and what did you get?" If it was too many times that you set the GAMSAT, I'm just going to die again because I want to be a doctor. That's never going to freaking happen. Give me a break. They just have to put some sort of hurdle because there's more people that want to do the degree than spots in the degree. And that's the long and short of it.
That's it. We have so many case studies of boot campers who came to us after having done the GAMS multiple times. And we help them to increase their score and get in. For example,
my God, Bailey. I have to talk about Bailey.
Yeah, well, before you go to Bailey, I was just speaking to one of our former boot campers, Hayden. Yesterday, he gave me a call. So just to give you a bit of background on Hayden, he did the GAMSAT 5 times in the end. Now, no one sets out to do the GAMSAT 5 times, right? But you do your absolute best each time. But he was able to he started in the 50s. And he ended up with a score, I think, in the low 70s, and he got into Griffith. And he called me just yesterday because he's going into his 4th year of medicine, and he's looking at where he wants to be in the future. Does he want to do anesthetics or ICU or become a GP? So we're having a discussion about that. But just to make the point clear there, despite having done the GAM 5 times, he is thriving and looking at the long-term plan now and about to become a doctor and really loving life. So it's possible and you can do it.
I kind of love that so many of our bootcamp members personally stay in touch with us because, I mean, it's all well and good to help people get into med. And, over the last 18 years, we've helped so many people. But, I do get the warm and fuzzies that we can, remain friends and be in contact and help people with their career. Even Nadia, who I'm not sure if we've released her podcast yet, but, she's been out in the medical world for the 10 years. I think she sat with us, was it 2015? And we're still in touch. Not because she's part of the boot camp and she has to, we are, because that's, I don't know, it's something that I really, really love. It's something that, I just enjoy being in touch with our boot camp members. But let me tell everybody about Bailey, who is this absolutely badass student. She came to us having sat the GAMSAT twice. UCAT twice. Didn't nail it, obviously. Sat the GAMSAT 3 times. I wonder if we can get her on the podcast, Tom. Let's write that down because I think she'd be a great guest. Sat the GAMSAT 3 times, never got over 60, sitting on her own. Then she came in, and the first time she sat with us, she got 70. And I think for her, and she had to go through this process, but we kind of mapped this process out for her. The first thing is she needed to reframe the experiences. None of it was a waste. It was all necessary for her particular journey. And the quicker you can kind of accept that and turn it into a positive, the better. But then what we had to do with her was sit down and actually diagnose what was going wrong. You can't just go,
there's no point doing what you did before and just doing more of the same. It's not going to get you a better result. It's just going to get you the same or a worse result.
Einstein saying if you keep on doing, what crazy is if you keep on doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So if you are smashing out the ACER papers, not building skills, just smashing out practice questions and expecting, and it didn't work the first time, please don't do it again. And I say that really from a place of love because I wish that worked. And if it was going to work, it would have worked the first time. But if it's not working, we've got to diagnose what's going on. So we kind of need to sit back and look at each section and go, okay, did I struggle with timing? Did I struggle with content and knowledge? Did I struggle with reasoning skills? Do I know, what skills do I have and not have? And really start by understanding that. The next step is then, okay, once I know what skills I have, how am I building these skills? We have a whole podcast episode about this. It is episode 3 of the January Jumpstart. So I think from memory, it was mid-January that it was released. And if you don't know how to build a skill, please go back and listen to that. Once you've identified what the skills are, then what we've got to be able to do is put this into a plan. Because what I find happens really regularly is that even if you know what you need to do, which most people don't know, and we can talk about what that looks like in a second, but even if you knew what to do, if you've not mapped out when you're doing it between now and the exam, we tend to at first not do enough and then leave it all to the end and then try and jam it into the end. And that's kind of like an Olympic athlete saying, well, I'm only going to do, an hour a day training for the Olympics and then 3 weeks before the Olympics train 8 hours a day. That's not working, right? We got to map it out because it's not knowledge-based. It's not about remembering shit. It's about really implementing the skills that you have, and the more we can do that over time, the easier it's going to get. And so, they're all of kind of the things we need to assess. We need to look backwards and use it as a learning skill. We also want to look how you're handling, what happened on exam day and how you're handling that stress. Because some people actually prepped okay, and then their fear of failure on exam day just kicked into next gear and they couldn't perform. Now, regardless of whether it was you didn't perform because of you didn't study properly or exam day stress and you're not managing anxiety or whatever things that kind of comes up on exam day, either way, we got to prep for that now. So diagnosing that now, just the same way that a doctor would diagnose a patient with any other issue, that's the first step. Tom, do you mind if we give away a freebie? I don't know if we talked about this before, but I think that it would be really good if we could give away our diagnostic tests to listeners. In fact, I'm just going to do it. Let's put into the show notes. We have section 1 and section 3 diagnostic tests so that you can actually start to see and understand where it is you need to go well, what you need to do to go well. So these tests, you sit down, it takes about an hour and a half. You do it in timed conditions, okay? Don't faff around with your phone and I'm just going to get a cup of tea halfway through. No, just sit down, smash it out in an hour and a half. We already know that you haven't gone well in the GAMSAT, so don't be surprised if these diagnostic tests tell you haven't gone well. It's not personal, but we're going to use that to find those skills so that you can go better next time.
Yeah, awesome. So if you go to the show notes, that you can get those for free. our diagnostic tests.
FF for free. Love that. I might be showing my age, but that's how, like, when my cousins and I used to go to, like, a club or something, we're like, FF for free. Maybe we're just tight asses in our youth as well. That might be it. That
No,
was
I think people still like that for sure.
Everyone still loves an FF? Okay, great.
All right, and so let's talk about what happens once you've kind of done a bit of a diagnostic process. You've done those diagnostic tests, or some ACE papers, and you're trying to decide, okay, what do I do now? The problem of having done the GAMSAT is that they don't give you any feedback from the actual exam. So you might have one section that's highest and the others are low. And oftentimes what people do at that point is they'll ignore that high section and go, I need to focus on these others. And then they sit against it again, and that high section becomes a low section, and the other ones don't really make a difference. They don't really change. So there's this kind of a balance between working on your weaknesses and working on your strengths. Now, obviously, if one or two or all the sections are a weakness, we need to increase those, right? So we need to hone in on the ones that are particularly bad. But at the same time, what I often say to our boot campers is, you're not guaranteed to get the same score in that high section as you were before. And we don't even want it to stay the same. We want it to go up. If it's a strength, let's really jump into it and take it even further, right? So we want to really be kind of balancing those two. We're working on the weaknesses, but then also strengthening the strengths. And so talking about each section in a bit more detail. So for section one, what's really key here is to really understand what these sections are testing you. Now, we can't go into the full length of what they're about in this podcast. We'll have other podcasts about them, and we cover this in the boot camp. But just so that you know, kind of what maybe have gone wrong for section one, the common mistakes that we see is that people will feel like they understand some of the passages. Like, I kind of understood and I felt a bit confident, but I got the wrong answers, or I got a low score. What's going on? Or they take a lot of time to actually get through the passages. They have to reread and double check stuff and slow it down. And both of those happen for the same reason, right? The people who are confident but get the wrong answer, and the people who have to slow down and double check stuff, and they often get the wrong answer too. They do that because they're not actually decoding the deeper meaning of the text, be it the passage or the cartoon or the poem, whatever it is, right? They get the superficial meaning, or maybe they don't get any meaning at all, and they've got to slow it down and double check stuff. And so the key here is to start to develop skills that are going to help you to pull apart and decode. We like to say install the GAMSAT skills for section one. And so what doesn't work here to do that are practice questions. Right? Practice questions don't develop your skills, they test them. So if you don't have the skills before you do the section one questions, you sure as hell won't have them afterwards. You're just going to feel like crap because you keep getting them wrong, right? And that happened to me too, right? There's no judgment there. Often people start that way because they just don't know what else to do with section one. They're like, cool, people say reading widely, whatever the hell that means.
Oh, please don't break my heart and say reading widely. Don't make me go into why reading widely sucks. Okay. Yeah. Well, if that's your one strategy, maybe we need to do an anti-reading widely podcast, Tom, because
I think so.
The number of people that I speak to that are like, well, I'm reading widely, and I'm like, well, how's that working for you? Like, it doesn't work.
Yeah, and I get it because, ACER actually tell people to read widely. Firstly, the people that make the test should not be recommending how to prepare for the test. It's counterintuitive. Don't you want to kind of challenge people? But even so, they're better at making the test rather than preparing for it because they're telling people to read widely, whatever that means. And people go in there.
It doesn't build skills. Reading widely helps you to read.
What do you read? What do you do while you're reading? Will it actually come up? Probably not. What are you meant to be doing on the day of the exam? It's not specific enough. And I'll drop some a resource on this showing you our methodology. You can start implementing that. I'll put that in the show notes. That's the thing to be working on in section one, moving away from reading widely and practice questions to actually working on the skills that are being tested here.
My favorite, skill acquisition techniques. That is what you need. If you take nothing else from this episode, it is stop reading widely and start implementing skill acquisition techniques. Because if you don't know how to answer the question but you can read, then reading widely is not going to help. Now, if you don't know how to read, you've got bigger fish to fry. But I don't think you're going to be sitting down and doing the GAMSAT if you don't know how to read, right? You all know how to read. You need to understand how to analyze, how to interpret the different types of texts.
Yeah, we could keep going on this. There's so much to say about section 1.
I know.
For myself, my English is not my first language. So this section was a real challenge for me. So I had to kind of figure out how do I get through this section without having to become a poet? And I was able to get through it. I can't remember my score. It was a decent score. But then even since then, we've had people on our team who have PhDs in this stuff, who are professors and lecturers, and that they've developed this process far more effectively, because most of the stuff out there is pretty much just really vague and general, particularly for section 1. And so it's important to have a very specific plan. And again, you can go to the show notes to get a bit more on that. But let's move on to section 2, because there's a lot to cover. And again, that could be section 1 could be a podcast on its own, and it will be. In fact, we've got a few coming up. So section 2. All right. So what you need to work on here really depends on the individual, right? It could be anything from coming up with ideas and making sure they've got a lot of depth to those ideas. Maybe it's planning, maybe it's structuring the essay, maybe it's structuring each paragraph, maybe it's having evidence, maybe it's the way you articulate yourself. It's hard to say unless we know what your individual issues are. But the main kind of takeaways here, if you're repeating the GAMSAT, is to not just write lots of essays and hope for the best, but we need to really dig down and pull apart what's working and what's not. And then hone in on the problem areas. So, for example, I like to use, I don't know if you can see in the background there, we've got the ukulele. I've got that ukulele. That's not just there to look pretty. It's actually one of the teaching props that I use for our boot camp. Is I pull it out and I talk about our 4D method, where if I want to learn the ukulele, a particular song, I need to go through a particular process to actually hear what is the song. Then I need to actually play the song on the ukulele over and over again to get better at it. Then I need to test myself in a bit of a pressured situation. You know, my daughter will come in to play, to listen to me play, and I'll play for her, and she goes,
She's a tough critic. She is.
She's tough. And then she goes, you messed up. Well, I'll think about it, and I'll identify that I messed up a couple of the chord changes. And so then I hone in on those chord changes. I do those over and over and over and over again. Right? And I'll do a few of these different problem areas, and I hone in on those specific problem areas, and I'll do drills on them over and over and over again before I then test myself again. Same here with the essays. There's no point just kind of reflecting on it and not putting pen to paper, and it's no point just constantly writing and not actually knowing what you need to work on. The key is to identify the problem areas, fix those specifically, and then keep on identifying further problem areas and keep fixing them as you go.
Can I mention Dongju, who was with us years ago, one of our students? He had sat it twice before, never gotten over 50 in the essay section. And what we identified for him, he was a Chinese international student, and obviously English not his first language, and also English not his happy place. Like, he wasn't there reading poetry for fun and, doing all that stuff for section 1 either. And when we actually started to identify what the blockages were for him, like where the weaknesses were, he had this underlying belief that he needed to write this like really elegant and fluffy essay that was going to like compete with the English language, like first English language speakers very like eloquently, and he was trying to write this like fluff ball. And when we got down to the actual skills that he needed, the next year he got a 62. Now, the way we did that was we stripped back and we got him writing a very, very simple essay. It wasn't fluffy. He wasn't trying to use big, long words. He wasn't learning big, long words. Short sentences to the point, but we looked at his idea generation. And we looked at what he was talking about and how he was pulling in these amazing examples. And for most people, they go, oh, 62 in the science section, in the essay section. Like, that's not groundbreaking. For him, it was the difference between getting in and not getting in, because he only needed a 51 to get in, because his science score was in the 90s. So understanding where your strengths and weaknesses are and what it is that's going to fix your particular issue.
The cat has just sneezed on the table.
Sorry for those. I was mid-sentence and I could see the cat sneezing.
Yeah, the cat's sneezing here on the table. I got to tidy that up. Sorry,
gross.
it's pretty
bad. She loves you more, clearly. She's given you all of her snots just to show that.
Yeah, it is so gross. That's the one downside with this cat. She sneezes a lot.
She is a sneezy cat. Usually cats make humans sneeze. That's what's funny about it.
I think she's allergic to humans. I think that's the problem.
I read somewhere.
For me, she's allergic to
She's allergic to you. I mean, we're all a little bit allergic to you in this family. I'm kidding.
Well,
I'm kidding.
You want to be the only one.
I read somewhere that cats think that their human family are just big hairless cats, which I think is hilarious as well. Anyway, we'll talk about Dongju. He's in med school. He's way into being a doctor now. But the core thing that I wanted to get across with that example before Gracie rudely interrupted was that he was able to hone in on where his strengths and weaknesses were, be able to remove things that weren't his weakness and really focus in on the things that he did well and get those things better. And when you can do that for section 2, and it takes not just self-reflection, it takes really facing your demons with section 2 because it's so subjective. You got to be able to understand what are those skills and am I genuinely good or bad?
Yeah, I think the bottom line here is that there are a multitude of ways to improve in section 2 and section 1.
Is not that strategy is his strategy. That's not everybody's strategy.
There's no one-size-fits-all approach. There's no secret hack or trick for the essays. As good as it would be to go, okay, here is the one thing you need to do to kick ass in section 2. It doesn't work that way. People have different styles, different kind of preferences, and so the key is to kind of see what's working for you and what's not, and hone into what is. But yeah, all right. So let's move on because we've got a lot to cover. And then there's section 3. All right, this is the big one. Chances are, if you're repeating the GAMSAT, it's because of section 3. And the biggest problems that we see here is that people have completely misunderstood what section 3 is about. Now, we do have a podcast episode on section 3. I believe it is podcast episode 2. Marie, would you? It's cool.
I can't remember. Go and have a look. thankflipgamsat.com/podcast.
Yeah, we go into
I'll tell you the exact one off the top of my head.
How to best study for the science section. But chances are, you want to repeat. So what people often get wrong with section 3 is that they go out and they study the science topics from a textbook and they memorize as many topics as they can. And then they do some practice questions to try and apply what they've learned or to learn reasoning that way. And what often happens is they just get terrible scores on those practice exams and they get into the GAMSAT and they're crushed by the whole thing. And look, you do need to have a certain basic knowledge of the sciences. And some of the nurses and healthcare professionals that come to us, they don't have that. They've done physiology and anatomy at uni, which is not GAMSAT science. And they're like, what's organic chemistry? What do the symbols mean? And so we need to kind of start with the basics. However, it's not about memorizing them. It's about understanding them, but also working them in to the thinking skills, to the reasoning skills that we talk about. And if there's one thing that you take away from this when it comes to section 3, it's to move away from memorizing science topics and move towards developing the reasoning skills. Now, with that said, developing reasoning skills is not about just pounding through practice questions, right? Just like with section 1, in section 3, practice questions don't develop your skills, they test them. So if you don't have the skills before you do the questions, you sure as hell won't have them afterwards. Again, you're just going to feel like crap because you keep getting them wrong. You read the explanations and they make sense, but then you move on to the next questions and you keep getting the same amount wrong because you're not actually developing skills. You're just reading the explanations and they make sense because they're really well articulated, right? And so what we want to be really focusing on is developing the skills and some of that understanding as well. And ideally, we do it simultaneously so that you're making progress quickly. And this is where it gets exciting because people with a health sciences background who don't really have a organic chemistry or a physics background can beat some of the science students if you do this correctly.
Yeah, I find that a lot of our kind of healthcare professionals know how to think. So, like, in your day-to-day jobs, my observation is that it's not just like always a checklist of ticking things off. You've actually got to think about what the next best thing is in that situation. There is an underlying problem solving mentality there, but then, like, how do we apply that to section 3? That's really where the reasoning skills are. And reasoning skills is not just exclusively problem solving. It's really, the way I see it, is it's a bunch of skills that you need to identify. Going through a diagnostic exam will help you to identify those skills, and then building the skills literally one by one, having a replicatable process you can follow, looking at worked examples, practice questions, all the things.
And this is where Bailey's experience, who Marie mentioned earlier, really comes in. So she had studied the science topics, right? She'd done the GAMSAT a couple of times.
She knew the sciences.
She knew the sciences.
The problem.
But she kept on getting things, and she'd done practice questions. And then she was like, what else is there to do? And we're like, all right, come and have a look at this. And we kind of walked her through this whole thing. And then the very next time she did the GAMSAT, she got a 70. And she got into, which unit? Wollongong?
Wollongong. I thought it was Wollongong.
Maybe it was Flinders. I can't remember right now. But yeah, she's in. She's a couple of years in now. And yeah, kicking ass, taking names. And the point here is that you can improve. We need to change the way that you're doing it. And what I will do is put in what we call our GAMSAT Science Advantage training into the show notes, and that kind of goes deeper into this as well. But
was that another FF?
Yeah, that was another FF.
I think we're just giving away so much stuff today. I feel like Oprah. I mean, maybe, I don't know. I'm sure everyone knows who Oprah is, but, back in the day where it's like, you get a car and you get a car.
Because really, I love helping people who have done the GAMS before and have come back for more, right? Because you guys are serious about this. Because most people, the vast majority of people, never come back. For whatever reason, right? Maybe they just gave it a try the first time, or they don't want to do it, or they realize it's not for them, whatever. But you guys are like, no, I want to do this. And so we go to a lot of effort to help people who have done the GAMSAT before and want to increase their score because you guys are serious, you're willing to do the work, and you've got a little bit of groundwork and understanding of the GAMSAT. But when you have these realizations that we're talking about here, it is like light bulb moments that kind of shift your perspective on the exam and shift your results in a really big way.
When we spoke to Bailey afterwards and was like, what's the main thing that changed? All of the shift away from knowledge to reasoning skills was one of the massive things that she said. The other thing that she said was accountability. Like someone just making sure she was doing the work, because it's really easy to think you're getting a lot done when you're like worried about it and stressing about it and thinking about it. But like if you've got a shift all day, because she worked as it was like an administrative position within the hospital. So she wasn't a nurse. She wasn't with the patients per se, but she was in the hospital behind the scenes. So she had a 9 to 5 or 8 to 4, but 9 to 5 role. And it's really easy when you're in that 9 to 5 to be thinking about, oh my God, when I get home, I'm going to do 2 hours of study and all day it's like going on in your head. And then you actually go home and you do those 2 hours of study, but those 2 hours feel like 8 hours of study because you've been bloody thinking about it all day. So like she said, it was really valuable in the way that we tracked the students' hours to be able to see what is actually being achieved and how much is it my mind thinking that I've done a lot of work, but you haven't. And part of that is like, it should come out in the way that you start to dissect how you studied for the exam kind of the first time or however many times you sat it, but in this inverted commas failing of the exam or not getting as well in the exam as you've gotten, as you would like, we should be reviewing like how did you study? What was that work ethic like? Did you really study as hard as it feels like you did, or was it worry not work? And I say that with love and compassion, not as anything that maybe like accusatory, like you're not working hard. No, maybe you really did and you just worked hard on wrong stuff and we've got to change that. Or maybe it just felt like you worked hard and you were maybe doing 5 hours a week. I don't
maybe
know.
there's another level that you can achieve, that you need to achieve.
Oh, yeah. Like, and a lot of the time, what I'm finding is that we can wring out more from people than they can do on their own just by really being onto it with them. Like, I lift heavier weights when Therese, my exercise physiologist, is there just because she's watching. Like,
Yeah, I think there's something to that. Yeah,
there's
definitely.
a study. My favorite study.
Oh,
My
yeah.
favorite study of all time showed, and I love it the most because I just think about how they did this study, which is like almost impossible in my brain. But it shows, 1969 study, it shows cockroaches run quicker when other cockroaches are watching.
Yeah, and somehow they generalize that to human beings. They said, if
I'm a
cockroaches
cockroach.
are doing that, that must be what people do. And that was,
Don't deny it, Tom. You do better when other people are watching too. You're a cockroach too.
yeah. No, it's true. It's true. That's a study that I told you about from my psychology undergrad.
I love it so much. I think I quote it every day of my life, honestly. Like, it is so good. And just imagine little grandstands and little binoculars.
Yeah, little like flags, and a couple of the cockroaches have like their name drawn on, and they like lift up their shirt like, all in a row, and that's it.
Remember when your cousin went to that CrossFit competition and I did like big signs from the crowd? That's what I'm imagining. Cockroaches.
There's one cockroach going up and down the aisles going, hot dogs, anyone want the hot dogs? Probably not hot dogs, it's like bits of some sort of gross thing that I hate cockroaches. So.
We could go on about it anyway. Hashtag cockroaches. Let's like make this a thing. Hashtag cockroaches. Like
living in Queensland, they're massive here. Like.
Oh, did I tell you the other day, Tom? I saw a cockroach and I pulled Gracie in front of it, thinking that she would kill the cockroach. Do you know what she did? She bopped it and walked away.
She patted the cockroach. Did she? Welcome to the family.
Hello.
The kitchen is that way. Help yourself. Yeah.
I mean, still love the cat. She's useless, but I love her and she's floofy. Anyway, I think the last part to wrap this all up, put a little bow on it, is you need to have a strategy to stay motivated. So whether it's like Tom and I, where we just, laugh about stuff goes wrong and we really try and get the positive out of it and turn it around as quickly as possible. Remembering it's not the end. The only way that this is an actual failure is if you stop trying. Because if you keep going, then it's just the road to getting to where you want to go.
It's not the first F word. It's not the failed F word. It's a different F word, which is feedback, right?
Not what I was thinking you were going to say.
Well, it could be the other one too, but it's feedback, right? That's what we got to use. That's how we got to use this. This is how we grow and improve, right? Even in medicine and as a doctor, you reckon doctors don't make mistakes? They do, but then they need to reflect on it and improve as a result. And that's what we really got to do with this sitting or the last 1 or 2 or 3, or however many sittings you've had.
Now, there's another F word that I want to bring into this, and it is forgiveness. Sometimes we actually need to just sit down for a moment, see that little inner child that's within us, and forgive ourselves for whatever mistakes we feel that we've made. Feel like you didn't try hard enough? Okay, forgive yourself and do better. You can't change what you've done. Feel like you focused on the wrong things and you invested time in the wrong area? Okay, forgive yourself. You didn't do that on purpose. You're not a bad person. You're not trying to fail. But forgiveness to yourself, not to anyone else. This is a gift you're giving to yourself. Forgiveness allows you to get the lesson out of it and to do better next time. Because if you're holding on to a grudge to yourself and just blaming yourself and thinking, I'm not enough and I don't feel good and there's something wrong with me and I'm never going to, and whatever stuff that's going on in your head, the quicker we can move through that and forgive, get the lesson, get the feedback, move on, the quicker you're going to bounce back.
That's it. All right.
So how shall we wrap up, Tom? What do you think's kind of...
Well, I think the big kind of takeaway here are these F words. It's not failure, it is feedback, and you need to kind of work in that forgiveness as well, and use the feedback to grow and improve. And there are the different resources here in the show notes that will help you to do that.
Yeah.
And yeah, look, I did end up doing the GAMSAT 3 times in the end, not because I wanted to. You know, some people go into it going, oh, I've heard that people have to do it twice or 3 times, and then they kind of fluff around the first time. That doesn't really count.
No.
If you fluff it around, it doesn't really count. But I sat it 3 times, but I gave it everything, absolutely everything I had every single time. And you have to do that to actually get the lessons out of it. Because when sometimes people come to us and they're like, well, I didn't study. I've done the GAMSAT once, but I didn't study. And I got these scores. And I'm like, well, it's kind of good and it's bad. It's good because, you know, you did well in this section, but not in these. But it's bad because we don't know why you did well in that section and none of these other ones because you didn't study. And so we're kind of starting from scratch. But even if that is your situation, we still need to go through the same processes that we spoke about here, diagnosing, forgiving, etc. And you might want to kind of implement, listen to this or implement the different resources we have in the show notes for you.
I feel like people don't, when you're in it, you don't know where this, inverted commas, failure is going to take you. Like, honestly, Tom, if you got in first go, no one would be sitting here right now. Literally no one. Now,
That's
when
true.
you first didn't get the result that you wanted, you weren't there going, well, I'm going to mold this so that I help 60,000 people to change their life and to help create them into doctors and blah, blah, blah. You weren't doing that.
No.
You didn't know. You needed to
holy crap, what do I do? How do I change this around? I know I did something wrong. I need to fix it up here.
Exactly. But without that failure, you wouldn't have had the experience to be able to know that other people needed help and to create systems to be able to help it. And I'm not saying everyone's going to have your story, Tom, but you don't know the skills that you're learning through this and how that's going to help. Like maybe in 10 years' time or 12 and a half years' time, one thing that you learned in the lead up to your second or third or fifth or however many GAMSATs that you sat is the one little detail that saves someone's life. Yeah. And if you got in first go, you would not have that skill or you would not have that piece of knowledge or you would not have the ability to save that person's life. And when you look at it that way and don't just try and control everything and go, well, it's my way and I need it by this time, da, da, da. And we look at it like, I don't know how this is going to impact my future, but I'm sure as hell make sure that it's in a positive way. Yeah. Then they're the people that, one, get in, and two, make freaking amazing doctors. Because that's a skill. I want the skill of being able to bounce back. Do you remember, Tom, when you were in your medical degree, and you kind of got to think about, like, when you're in medicine, you're with a whole bunch of really high achievers, right? Like everybody who got top of the class, that's who you're now in.
Everyone's used to being the top of the class, and then they're all together and they're just average, and people
exactly
flip out.
What I was going to say. Remember then that first half yearly, because basically 95% of your results is on like the final year exam.
Yeah, it depends on the uni, but Notre Dame.
Back in the day when you were doing it, that's kind of what it was like. Then they do these mid-year tests that are worth like next to nothing, but it's almost like just making sure you're tracking in the right direction. And then a whole bunch of people did not get top of the class. They got kind of, they passed, but not fantastically. And the meltdowns that happened because they had no resilience. They didn't know how to handle anything not going the way they wanted it to. Like there's all of these extra life skills you're going to learn right now if you step up and take that challenge.
Yeah.
You're going to learn resilience. You're going to learn how to handle bad feedback. You're going to learn how to redirect when you've done stuff that hasn't been successful so that you can get back on a better path. Like, all of these things are important. You need it. So enjoy that process, which sounds silly right now. Like, I'm not going to enjoy not going well. But right now, you are learning the best lesson you can in life. And it is how to bounce back so that nothing will ever, ever, ever get in your way.
Love it. Fantastic. All right, on that note, let's wrap it up. Thank you, Marie. Thank you to the sneezing cats as well.
Who's the real MVP here? It's Grace.
Yeah, she had the catchphrase of the podcast. I chew.
Oh, I love it. Go
right.
and enjoy where you're at. Start all of the F words, getting the feedback, doing the forgiveness, and we will see you next week for another installment of the Nurses Doing GAMSAT podcast.
See you guys.
Bye for now. Hey, I have a cool gift for you, just for listening to the Nurses Doing GAMSAT podcast. We do some of our best work in our Facebook group called, you guessed it, Nurses Doing GAMSAT. It's free to join, and every day we're sharing actionable guides, tips and tricks, and really just how to smash the exam and get into medicine. You can join today by searching Nurses Doing GAMSAT on Facebook. Thanks for listening to another episode, and I'll see you next time.